Hello again, this is Andrew Wright. I'm glad you've decided to watch this second free, higher level sample of my Andrew Wright English or AWE program. Using these AWE courses will set you on the journey to speaking a much more competent level of standard or BBC or Queen's English. Greetings English students everywhere, and thanks for joining me again. I say again, of course, since this is the second of 2 free samples at this higher level. However, if by some curious logic you've arrived on this second sample without looking at the first one, I'd strongly advise you to go back and look at that one now, before continuing here, as it'll set you up with the background to the higher level. Also, please watch both the 5-minute overview and 15-minute free introduction to AWE. These will give you a good insight into how we will work together if you decide to take one or more of my courses. It includes my aims for you, a good demonstration of my style, and so on. Don't forget what I've said in the other free samples, that all the English you practice speaking with me will serve you well, since it's only by speaking that you can improve your speaking, not just listening, reading, writing, and so on. Fail to practice means you will fail to succeed. Remember, listen up to the marker, stop the recording, say the sentence while listening to your own voice and adapting it to mine, repeating as necessary. I'm going straight into sample topics now, so I can give you a good little range of the kind of thing we're going to be dealing with in the higher level courses. For my first, I'm going to hit you with a few examples of colloquial English. Just a reminder, colloquial English is generally accepted as being words and expressions that we use in informal situations and not in writing or more formal life. Bear in mind, though, that in emails with colleagues you know well, you may decide that a certain level of colloquialism is okay. However, also note, of course, that you may have to explain your colloquialism if the people you're talking to haven't got as good an understanding of colloquial English as you do. Let's look at a few phrasal verbs first, shall we? Oh, do I hear some of you groaning? Yes, the favourite subject to dislike for some students, I know, but you will have to make an effort with some of these if you really want to get up to advanced or proficiency levels. However, don't think you need to remember to use them all the time. That might sound rather false as a foreign speaker, but you can expect to hear them a lot when listening to native English speakers. Don't forget that it's more or less a waste of time trying to analyze the meanings from the separate parts of the expressions. In the vast majority of cases, you can't. Here are a few I'd say were commonly used in the appropriate circumstances. First, a couple of topical or relatively new ones connected with modern technology. I'm not going to analyze the format of them, but I'll give you the meanings in case you're not familiar with them, and also for you to practice speaking. Oh, you never know, you may have to make these explanations sometime. If I ask you to scroll up or scroll down a computer screen, it means to move the visible part of the website or document or whatever up or down, so we can see another section of it. Click on means to hit on something on the screen with your mouse or pointer. Most of you will be familiar with print off, which used simply to be print, as in, I need to get 16 copies of my report printed off. We talk about going into a particular document or folder or section on our computer. But of course, we're not actually going anywhere, are we? Equally, going onto the internet doesn't mean that we're suddenly going to be able to fly or teleport ourselves. Sometimes warnings and various other messages flash up on the screen, meaning suddenly appear. And occasionally, the internet connection may break down or fail. Pop-ups are also little windows that appear, often unexpectedly, sometimes useful, often not. And from time to time, pictures may fade in or fade out without your help or participation, meaning they slowly come onto the screen or disappear from it. If you need to print documents, your scanner or printer may need time to warm up or come to life. And if you're like me, you periodically find your machine seizes up, stops working, either because you haven't loaded the paper tray correctly, or the internet connection has gone down or stopped working. Right, that's enough of those, although there are lots more. A few examples from another area now. There are quite a lot of phrasal verbs connected with the idea of arriving, either at a place or a point of time. So let's look at a few. Get to the point, will you? Asks you to hurry up, a phrasal verb itself, and reach the important thing you want to say. To arrive at a decision or conclusion means or suggests that at least you gave the subject some serious thought, whereas to hit on an idea suggests the opposite. To get round to an activity or job hints that you had other things to do first or hadn't enough time, and your coming round to my way of thinking tells me I had to work hard to persuade you. To turn up can simply mean to arrive, as in, she always turns up late, or to reappear, as in, my glasses finally turned up on the floor of my car. And to roll up usually means arrive at leisure and not in a hurry. To arrive by public transport, bus or train, is usually to get in. Example, what time does your train get in? But don't confuse this with get into, as in car. By the way, planes land. They don't usually get in. In a car, you can either pull in at a service station or pull up at your destination or temporarily at a traffic light, not forgetting that occasionally you may have to pull over to the side of the road if a policeman tells you to, or one of your children suddenly feels sick. Okay, those two are not really arriving as such, but they fit into the way the other two pulls, more or less. By the way, don't pull out in your car without carefully checking that there is no one about to pass you, or you may end up in an accident. Okay, that was a quick dive into a few phrasal verbs. And I guess you may realize that dive into isn't a phrasal verb, but a metaphor. Look it up. Another phrasal verb. I'll be putting the other 100 most used phrasal verbs on my vlog, by the way, later on. As for my second grammar topic for you, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes or so looking at a few samples of words and phrases under the heading of connecting ideas in both single and multiple sentences. I'm not going to insult you with the obvious connecting words that everyone's familiar with, such as and, but, and or, and their like. However, that's one. There are quite a lot which you may find useful, but haven't yet, or haven't comfortably, or haven't often used. Most of the single connecting words are called conjunctions. Quite a few of them have fairly similar meanings, especially those similar to but and maybe. So that's one, of course. Listen to these variants and their examples. First, connections through reason. The obvious word we would use would be because. For example, because the weather forecast said it's very likely to rain tomorrow, we've decided to postpone the site visit. You can very often substitute as or since in such sentences without any change in the meaning, though perhaps they're a bit more formal. Note, by the way, that whichever of these three you use to connect the two parts of a sentence, it doesn't matter which of the two parts of the whole sentence you put first. Some of you will also be thinking about the word so, which is also a reason word. The only real difference is that the so result of a cause statement must be placed second in the sentence. For example, my car won't be ready till Monday, so can we go out in yours on Sunday? Next, we express contrast, sometimes also with surprise, using but, although, or even though, and sometimes more formally while and whereas, to compare two situations maybe. For example, I'd invite my parents, although I'm pretty sure they'd refuse. Or, what? You bought it, even though you knew you can't afford it? And you've certainly come across however, which is also used when contrasting something which may or may not be surprising. I use it quite frequently. For example, yes, Irene's gorgeous. However, watch out for her moods. She can be quite bad-tempered sometimes. Some of the more complex connecting phrases include these, sometimes known as discourse markers. Not important. On the other hand, when you're talking about different options, for example, darling, I'd like a new watch for my birthday. On the other hand, I wouldn't say no to a weekend in Paris instead. While offers something extra to an idea, meaning either at the same time or as a contrast. Apart from means either except or except for. So, for example, we'll all be there for dinner first, apart from Stephanie, of course. She doesn't finish work until late on Fridays. As I was saying, clearly connects what I'm now going to say with what my previous conversation or point was. It's often used sarcastically when someone's interrupted you. It's often said by wives to husbands and vice versa. Vice versa, by the way, if you don't know it, is one of quite a number of Latin words and phrases which are commonly used in English. I mean in English is often thrown into the explanation in more detail to emphasize or to exaggerate if the speaker realizes he hasn't been clear. For example, he's hopeless. I mean, it's not the first time he hasn't enough money to buy a round. Note, to buy a round is culturally very important in England, especially in pubs. It means to take your turn to buy drinks for everybody in a group. Well, you know, sort of, and kind of, as well as the infamous are all examples of ways of gaining time or delaying what you're thinking of saying next, either because you don't really know what you're going to say, or you want to be careful to express something clearly. For example, well, you know, it's a sort of biggish animal, a kind of greyish colour. I mean, you find it in the jungle. Yes, an elephant, that's what it's called. I'm afraid in normal conversation doesn't mean I'm shaking with fear, at least not usually, unless you're just about to ask your boss that you need a raise in salary. It means I regret. For example, I'm afraid not, sweetheart. We haven't really got room for an elephant. That's after your 4-year-old daughter has just watched the Jungle Book film and wants one. And finally, to the adverb actually, which is often used as a connecting word. It's used rather too often by some native English speakers. Here's a correct example, typically used to correct or to confirm something either you or somebody else has just said. You were in Budapest for your holiday, weren't you? Actually, it was Prague, but in some ways they're quite similar. Or, could you follow my directions okay? Yeah, actually they were clearer than my sat-nav. Sat-nav is our word for what most people call GPS. Right, that'll do for these connecting ideas for now. It's time to wrap up this short film. You've now had a couple of tasters of my style of presentation and teaching. Now it's up to you to decide how you wish to continue. Before I chat about that, though, I'm going to ask you whether you have faithfully followed my method so far, all the way throughout these 2 samples. If you forgot, please go back and repeat this little sample session. I repeat, you can only improve your spoken English by speaking. If you continue to one of my courses, I look forward to helping you more extensively there. The 1-hour express trial for this level will be available on the website before the end of July, and the 6-hour introductory course in August. The 24-hour short course will appear at about the end of September. Please have a look on the vlog on the website for regular new short items of interest, and at this AWE YouTube channel for a continuing series of further short lessons on particular individual topics which I haven't managed to get into the courses themselves. Above all, enjoy what you do in English. Be happy with what you can do and look forward to what you will be able to do in the near future. Right, time's run out again, so here are the usual closing comments. The last reminder to practice all the material in this second session. Do it now, please, if you haven't, or I shall haunt you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this clip and found it useful, please hit the like button, subscribe to Andrew Wright English, and be kind enough to tell anyone you know who needs further English tuition about me. And last but not least, please look out for the courses on the website andrewwrightenglish.com soon. This was Andrew Wright with a second sample higher level lesson from Andrew Wright English. Again, thanks for watching and bye for now.